There are people who can't just let things be, not because they're controlling, not because they don't trust others, but because when someone near them is struggling, something inside them moves, automatically, before they've even decided to. They're the one people call at 2 a.m., the one who notices when something's off before anyone says a word, the one who remembers everyone's important dates, keeps track of everyone's stress levels, and somehow always knows what the room needs. From the outside, this looks like a gift. Warm, reliable. The kind of person everyone wishes they had in their life. But from the inside, it feels like a light that never turns off. Not the warm, cozy kind. The fluorescent kind. The kind that hums at every hour and illuminates every corner of every relationship. Every tension, every unspoken worry, every small shift in someone's energy. Even when you're exhausted, even when you're alone, even when no one is asking anything of you. The caring doesn't pause, it just keeps going. Most people have a way to step back, to help, and then return to themselves. But some minds don't work that way. For them, caring isn't a behavior, it's a baseline. And while that sounds like depth, like love, like strength, it often feels like a role you never auditioned for, but can't figure out how to leave. That's where this story begins. For the person who always takes care of everyone, the world comes with a second layer of information that most people don't perceive. You walk into a room and you already know. Not from what anyone says, from something else. The way your partner is loading the dishwasher tells you they're annoyed, even though they said they're fine. The tone of your friend's text says more than the words. The slight pause before your coworker answered means something happened. You catch it all, immediately, without effort. You're not trying to analyze people. You're not paranoid. You're not overthinking. Your brain is just running a program in the background, constantly scanning, updating, interpreting. If something changes, there's a reason. So you look for it. You replay the conversation. You check for inconsistencies. You try to understand what's happening beneath the surface so you can stay ready, stay helpful, stay safe. Psychology calls this cognitive empathy, the ability to understand another person's inner world without being told. But for the person who can't stop caretaking, it goes past understanding. It becomes absorption. Your friend's anxiety follows you home. A tense conversation leaves a tight feeling in your chest for hours. Someone else's bad day somehow becomes your problem to fix, even when they never asked you to. And here's the part people almost never see from the outside. You seem grounded, calm, emotionally intelligent. You're the one people feel safe with. But you're quietly carrying more than one nervous system at a time. And almost no one ever thinks to ask how you're actually doing. There's something else. When someone near you is struggling, and you just sit there, something inside starts twisting. Not because you were asked to help, not because it's technically your responsibility, just because you can see the problem, and your body is already searching for the solution. Automatically, before your conscious mind weighs in. A friend vents about being overwhelmed, and you're already mentally reorganizing their schedule. A colleague looks lost, and you're composing the exact thing you'd say to help. Your partner goes quiet, and you start running through possibilities. What happened? What did I miss? What do I need to fix? You don't choose this. It just happens. Because staying still when someone nearby is in pain feels almost physically wrong, like an alarm going off that only you can hear. Family systems therapists call this overfunctioning, a term first developed by psychiatrist Murray Bowen in the 1960s. The idea is this: in any system, a family, a couple, a workplace, when anxiety rises, someone compensates. They take over. They do more. They carry the weight that others aren't carrying. And that person is almost always the one who feels things earliest, the one who notices tension before it has a name, the one who operates, often unconsciously, from the belief, if I don't handle this, something worse will happen. Here's what's important to understand about that. This isn't purely altruism. It's also, at least in part, a way to manage your own anxiety through action. When you help, you feel useful. You feel in control. You feel like you have a place in the situation. When you don't help, you're left with the discomfort and no other way to process it. This isn't a character flaw. It's a coping mechanism, one that worked for you once. It just doesn't know when to stop. There's a question that people who constantly take care of others rarely ask themselves. What do I actually need right now? Not what's best for everyone. Not what's the responsible thing to do. Not what will make the situation easier. Just, what do I need? That question is surprisingly hard to answer, because when putting others first becomes a deeply ingrained habit, your own desires start to feel secondary, optional, almost self-indulgent. You can read another person's emotional needs with remarkable accuracy. You know what your friend needs when they're anxious. You know what your partner needs when they're drained. But when you're the one who's struggling, you often don't know what to do with that, because no one spent a lot of time teaching you how to be on the receiving end. This doesn't look dramatic from the outside. Nothing has collapsed. You're functional. You have relationships. You have plans. But inside, there's a quiet imbalance. You give and give and give. And when you need something, you find that you don't know how to say it. Or you say it, but feel guilty. Like you're burdening someone. Like asking for help is something you haven't earned the right to do. Clinical psychologist Lindsay Gibson, whose work on emotionally immature parenting has sold over 1 million copies in the US alone, describes it this way. Children who grow up believing their value is tied to their usefulness tend to become adults who don't know how to exist outside the helper role. Their needs don't get deliberately ignored. They just, quietly, gradually, stop feeling important. First in childhood, then in adult relationships, then everywhere. And the hardest part, it doesn't feel like a loss. It just feels like who you are. There's another dimension to this that almost never gets talked about. Caring is work. Real, concrete, costly work. Emotional work. Mental work. Time. You're the one who remembers birthdays, tracks everyone's stress levels, anticipates what's going to become a problem before it does, and manages the emotional temperature of every room you walk into. That background process is running constantly, and it costs something. A 2024 Gallup report found that 60% of high-potential employees regularly take on invisible labor beyond their official roles. Mentoring, conflict resolution, emotional support for teammates, things no one asked for and no one formally recognizes. These employees are significantly more likely to burn out. but they're not more likely to get promoted. Because invisible work, by definition, doesn't get seen. In personal relationships, the dynamic is exactly the same. You're the one who notices your partner is off before they've said a word. You're the one softening tensions at family dinners, managing the logistics, making sure things run smoothly. Nobody asked you to. Nobody will necessarily thank you for it, because for everyone around you, this is just how you are. And slowly, you start to wonder, is this just my role? Am I okay with that? This isn't resentment exactly. It's not even anger. It's a slow, quiet depletion that builds when you keep giving, again and again, and never pause to ask, what am I getting back from this? Not because you don't deserve anything, but because the idea of needing something back stopped feeling like an option a long time ago. At some point, caretaking stops being just about others. It becomes a strategy. If I pay close enough attention, nothing bad will catch me off guard. If I anticipate problems early enough, I can prevent them. If I keep everything in balance, maybe nothing will fall apart. This isn't controlling behavior in the obvious sense. It's an internal system for managing anxiety, one that runs quietly and constantly in the background. You take on responsibility for other people's emotions, for their decisions, for their outcomes, not because someone gave it to you, but because if you don't hold it, who will? Because letting go and not knowing what happens next feels almost unbearable. Because somewhere underneath the logic, there's a belief. If something goes wrong, it's because I didn't do enough. And here's the quiet irony of this. The overfunctioner, the person who takes on everything, doesn't actually control more. They just worry more. Because the more you take on, the more territory you feel responsible for. The more places where something could go wrong. The louder the background hum of anxiety that never fully goes quiet. The caretaking that was supposed to create safety ends up creating more pressure. And you keep going. Not because you don't notice, but because you don't know another way. This level of caretaking doesn't appear out of nowhere. It has a history. And for most people, that history starts long before adulthood. Researchers who study this pattern keep finding the same thing. Children who grew up in environments where emotions were unpredictable, where moods shifted without warning, where safety depended on reading subtle cues correctly, where love felt conditional on being useful or good. These children learned something crucial: how to scan a room the moment they walked in, how to notice the tone before the words, how to feel the emotional temperature before deciding whether to speak, or whether to disappear just enough to stay safe. No one taught them this explicitly. Their nervous system figured it out on its own, because it had to. Psychologists call this parentification, when a child takes on the role of emotional caretaker for the adults in their life. It doesn't always look severe. It doesn't always look like obvious dysfunction. Sometimes it's just being the kid who sensed when dad was about to get angry and quietly redirected the conversation. The one who made sure the house felt okay so mom wouldn't get upset. The one who held it together so everyone else could fall apart. The one who learned that their value, their safety, their belonging, depended on how well they took care of things. You didn't choose this. You became this, because paying attention once kept you safe. Understanding that changes everything. Because it replaces self-judgment with context. You're not broken. You're not too sensitive. You're not someone who has mysteriously failed to develop normal boundaries. You're someone with a highly trained nervous system that learned to take care of others as a survival strategy. And the tragedy isn't that you learned it. The tragedy is that the system never learned to turn itself off. Even when the danger passed, even when you're an adult, even when the environment is safe, even when no one needs you to hold everything together anymore, your nervous system still acts like they do, and it's exhausted. So are you. The body isn't an infinite resource, and a nervous system that runs in high alert mode for years, that constantly scans, anticipates, responds, and absorbs, eventually starts sending signals. Not always dramatic ones, not always obvious ones. Sometimes it's just exhaustion that sleep doesn't fix. Irritability that wasn't there before. The sense that you're doing all the same things, but something inside isn't responding the way it used to. Therapists call this compassion fatigue, the gradual wearing down of the capacity to feel and respond to the pain of others. You're still showing up, still present, but inside, something has gone quieter. Like the volume got turned down. And that's frightening, because caring is how you've always understood yourself. It's part of your identity. So when it starts feeling like effort instead of instinct, it can feel like you're losing something essential. There's another cost that's harder to admit. Over time, something that looks a lot like resentment can start to build. Not toward any one person, just toward the pattern, toward the invisible arithmetic of always giving more than you receive, toward the fact that your needs seem to consistently end up last, and that's uncomfortable to acknowledge. Because you chose to help. No one forced you. But a choice made from fear or from habit isn't entirely free. And anger that accumulates without words is a signal. Not a character flaw. It's your system telling you, I need to receive something too. The solution here is not to stop caring. It's not to become colder, more distant, more guarded. That depth of feeling, the ability to notice, to sense, to be genuinely present with other people, that's not the problem. That's actually a gift. The problem is the cost. And the cost can change. The first shift, learning to tell the difference between my anxiety and someone else's actual need. Because a lot of the time, when we rush to help, we're not actually helping. We're trying to quiet our own discomfort. We intervene not because the person needs rescuing, but because watching their discomfort is unbearable for us. And that distinction matters enormously, because in the second case, you're not helping them. You're taking away their chance to handle it themselves. Before stepping in, the question worth asking is, do they actually need me here? Or do I just need to do something? The second shift, letting someone else's pain exist without immediately trying to fix it. You can be present with someone who's hurting without taking responsibility for making them feel better. This is harder than it sounds, because our brains have been trained to treat presence and obligation as the same thing. But I'm here, and I'll make this stop are different. And most of the time, someone who's hurting needs the first, not the second. The third shift is the hardest, including yourself in the circle of people you care for, not instead of others, alongside them. Asking yourself the same questions you're so skilled at asking others. What do you need right now? What are you feeling? What would actually be good for you today? And taking the answer seriously, not filing it away, not saving it for when you have more time. Not because you're selfish, but because you cannot pour from an empty cup. And you've been running on empty for longer than you probably realize. The part of you that notices, that feels, that shows up, consistently, reliably, often at personal cost. That isn't a flaw. People with that kind of depth are the ones others build their trust around, the ones who make relationships feel safe, the ones who hold communities together in ways no one can fully measure. But connection doesn't require self-erasure, and care doesn't diminish when you stop disappearing inside it. A nervous system that learned to stay constantly alert can learn something new. Not quickly, not easily. But this isn't a personality question. It's a practice question. It's built through small, repeated moments of choosing. To notice your own experience. To name what you feel. To let your needs take up some space. And what tends to happen when you stop measuring your value by how much you've done for everyone else is something unexpected. Your care for others doesn't shrink. It just changes shape. Quieter, more chosen, less driven by fear and more by genuine presence. And for the first time in a long time, there's room in it for you. The goal isn't to stop being someone who cares. The goal is to stop caring in ways that cost you yourself. If any of this felt familiar, if you recognized yourself somewhere in here, you're not alone. There are a lot of people living this way. They just rarely talk about it, because the people who've spent their whole lives taking care of everyone else often don't quite know how to talk about themselves. This channel is a space for people who feel things deeply and think carefully about the human mind. If this video gave you something, consider subscribing. It's how we keep having these conversations. And if something here resonated, leave a comment. Not for me, but because someone else out there is watching this right now, wondering if they're the only one who feels this way. Your words might be exactly what they needed to hear.